But where we are shifting right now with in a society that you can outsource your voice, your pictures, your video, your copy, we are quickly being trained to trust nothing out the gate. And now you have to earn my trust because I'm starting at no trust because I'm assuming you used AI to do everything. So now I'm looking for a breadcrumb that makes me think, oh, there was a real human behind this post.
Shift happens, opportunities change, and success is a choice. So when shift happens, it is our choice. Either we let shift happen or we can make shift happen. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to the Talking Shift podcast with my very good dear friend, my rad collab partner, my AI fight clubber, my good friend, Katie Shive, the
Hey, hey.
brand expert of the business. Katie, welcome to Talking Shift.
Thanks. I'm excited to be on the show. We talk a lot of shift outside of talking shift. So it feels really fun to be officially talking shift on record.
Well, I kind of figured at some point we should just turn the camera on because we have so many good, and these are it's funny. I mean, even just before we press play right here, we're sitting here talking about what's happening in this business. I mean, we serve the mortgage business, but really serving the greater business. And I'd often say our world is under shift right now. We're going through shift. Society's going through shift. I mean, obviously the social media noise, but the social media noise has expanded text now
Mhm.
because of the AI,
Yeah.
war on our eyeballs and attention. And you mark that against, again, the headlines and politics and, the mortgage business. I'm looking at rates this morning, the 10 years at 4.66. And so, there's just so much going on, but yet in all of that noise, and this is, I think, where, why I'm so excited about this conversation, because there's so much noise. And as you often hear me say, so we have to be
Mhm.
the signal through the noise. And so for everybody listening, whether you are an executive, you're in leadership, you're an originator, you're in real estate, you're not even in the mortgage business, you're doing what you do, there's a brand identity crisis out there. And I was just giving a webinar the other day, and it's 3 years ago, we were taught and always intuitively lead with value. Lead with value. And now my argument is no, don't lead with value. Why? Because it's not memorable, it's noisy, and it's one of the crowd. We have to lead with the problem we solve.
Mhm.
And that problem we solve is the value. And so I'm seeing now in a very fast amount of time that this brand identity crisis of what are we doing? What do you do? How do you serve your client? How do you make that connection? And why should they care? And, Katie, you are someone that cuts through that noise, and helping, your clients, through your brand book builder and so much more, really, really, isolate in and find that brand identity and solve that noise and be the signal. And so, Katie, what are you seeing as a common thread when you're starting to work with clients and people are coming to you? What is that crisis point?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people initially will hear of me of oh, you need to call Katie. She helps, build AI tools. So going back to, right now, AI is largely the shiny object. It's the predominant conversation in most rooms and in a lot of different capacities. And so everybody in business that has a pulse that is trying to grow their reach is needing to figure out this AI. And so people will come to me and be like, okay, well, I need to learn how to use AI. And I always say hey, what are we trying to accomplish before we just answer the question, let's use Chat GPT better? What is the greater goal that you have? It's not just to be the next Sam Altman and lead in building AI tools, but what is your goal? And so when I kind of unpack that, most of what I find is that people, like you're saying, they don't know how to create a signal. They don't know how to build trust with their audience. And for a long time, I would argue that as marketers, we've always said we just need to post more. You just need to
Mm,
create more content. You just need to get in front of more eyeballs. And there it's not that that statement is entirely wrong, but I feel like it's half-baked. Like, yes, you need to get in front of more eyeballs, but you need to get in front of the right eyeballs with the right story. Because you could have a strategy that makes you maybe go viral, but that doesn't mean that it's gonna actually convert to better conversations and eventual sales. It could just mean that you have lots of eyeballs from the wrong, from the wrong audience. So I always look at what is your brand foundation, right? If I were to scroll any of your Instagram, pages, LinkedIn, email, any of your digital accounts, really quickly, would I be able to get a sense of who you are, what you do, how you help, the value that you're talking about, right? The problems that you solve. More often than not, I can't answer that question or I can't answer it quickly. An example, recently I was doing an audit for a mortgage team. I was on a call with them. And so I was prepping for the call and I was looking at one of their top producers to use as an example. And I go to the individual's page on Instagram and I had to scroll like 10 swipes before I got to one post that this individual ran, a race, like a 5K or something. And I was like, okay, of the 100 posts that I just scrolled past, it took me 100 to get to one 5K. Everything else was your corporate branded stuff, which teaches me nothing about who you actually are. So I'd say that's really where I start is, hey, before we try to develop any AI systems or actually build a content strategy, we actually need to start really back at the basics, like understanding, who are you? Why should I give you my business? Why should I give you my attention? And let's start with your story.
Well, and it's so important, and so much what I'm focused on right now too, as well. And again, it doesn't matter if you're an executive, you're a CEO, you're a branch manager, or regional, or an originator. There's been a an onslaught of people that are like, I'm not gonna say they're stuck. Some are stuck, but like, what am I doing? And so I've been diving right back into, okay, what's our vision, mission, and values? Because before we can even start creating our brand and how are we going to connect it to the market? And to your point, like I want to tell people, people connect with people, not product. And our consumer, who is an AI empowered consumer now, I think they are caring less and less about the logo on your door.
Mhm,
And yet we're not really sure how else to connect. And people, and to your point, people care about the 5K race you ran. They don't care about the DSCR loan that you have or that product that you have. They don't even know what it means anyway, right? And so really getting down to the core of, okay, what do you believe in? What do
mhm,
you care about? What problems do you solve? Who are you solving them for? Why does that matter? Is that what gives you abundant energy as if you're plugged into the wall versus if you're plugged into a battery that's going to be depleting? Well, and that's why I jump right into, okay, vision, mission, and values. And I care less about your vision. I
mhm.
care the most about your mission, which means your purpose. What is your purpose? And when we get clear and connected with that, that's what gives us abundant energy. That's what it gives us, I think, abundance, especially in our personal brand and being able to connect that into the market.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. People, I mean, I know this is a very worn out phrase of people do business they like, know, and trust, but at the end of the day, you information is no longer an advantage. Like that
Right.
is not your value proposition. You cannot lead on I'm the most well versed on X, Y, or Z.
I know all my products. It's
It's important. I do want to know, like, yes, when I'm looking at your content, I need to be able to answer that this person knows what they're talking about. Yes, I want confidence. And yes, I want to know that you're a competent, like, person and you can do exactly what you say you're going to do. So I need to know that you're good. But more than that, I also want to know, who are you as a person? Because there's, like, we think about the financial services sector, at least, like, whatever aspect that is, like, it is really vulnerable and scary and overwhelming. Actually, this is a great example. My parents, they're older age, and I literally spent over an hour on the phone with them this morning. They're in the process of trying to figure out if they want to buy a different house and what their kind of, not end of life strategy, but this would be like their last move that they would do. I'm just listening to both my parents and the overwhelm that's just kind of coming up through the words and the phrases that they're saying. And I'm like, yeah, they're the type of person they would care less about the programs and the products. At the end of the day, my mom's like, I just need to talk to a human. I don't want to talk to a call center. Like I need that trust. And that's the power of what your content, what your personal brand can convey when you do it. But here's the thing, most of us have not even stopped to even ask the question of ourselves, right? What is your mission or what fires you up? Like, let's be honest, we're not in an industry that is just super easy and void of stress, right? I joke that we're all missing a screw to stay in the mortgage industry, especially if you have any kind of tenure.
Glutton for punishment.
We're all a glutton for punishment, right? And so, like, why do you stay in here? And yes, the money can be really good, and that is an element of it, but
It's a
that certainly
byproduct.
cannot be your driver. So why do you keep showing up? I mean, some of the simple questions I even get at are like, what do you believe about homeownership? And if it's just that I want to empower everybody to become a homeowner, like that is the most cliche statement. Like, what is deeper than that? An example that I love, you and I have a mutual friend. Shout out to Kelly Carr if she's listening. But she sent an email out, and Kelly and I have worked on some stuff with content. You know, everybody nowadays, it seems like a lot of people have a newsletter. A lot of people have, an email roster that you send, right? And you should. It's a really good tool to deplatform. But anyways, she sends out, I think it's a monthly email, and I get a ton of emails, right? Like we're all competing for noise and what we actually read. So your subject line is really critical. So there was something about her subject line that I was like, it's Kelly. I love Kelly. I'll open her email and check. And I started to read, and this was one of the best emails that I've read in a really long time because she opens with a story. And
Mhm.
so she starts by sharing, "Hey, I was preparing for an upcoming like BNI group meeting where I had to share why, like my why I'm in this industry." And she goes, "The first thing that came to mind is the elevator pitch that I've been saying for the last 15 years. I love helping people become homeowners, blah blah blah." That's the most flat,
Mhm.
devoid of any semblance of like, "Oh, that's really compelling." Anyways, here's where the email got really good because she said, "It dawned on me. I thought of a story leading back to my dad." And she shares this story how her dad passed away when she was 14 and he had left her some funds in a trust that she was able to access. She closed on her very first condo 3 days after she turned 18. That condo, instead of staying in the dorms, that was her housing all through college. And then she shares the really sad part is that right when she graduated college, she learned that her dad's wife had embezzled her trust fund and she lost all of her inheritance. And her one liner at the end is she said, "But I still had my condo on Capitol Hill." And then she starts to say, 20 years later, however long she's been in the journey, she starts to talk about, and I realized that that single purchase helped me blah, blah, blah. And it was the one thing that I had left from my dad all of these years later. And all of a sudden, I'm reading this email. I'm like spoon feeding, like line for line.
I'm listening.
My
Yeah.
kids are in the car. Like, my husband is, like, getting ready to drive out the driveway, and I was like, "Everybody can wait. I'm finishing this email." Because now I was drawn in by a story that had a very clear conviction behind her why. There was not a shred of, "Call me if you want me to pre-approve you." There was not a shred of sales. It was just, like, and I'm texting her, she goes, "It was my most vulnerable email I've ever sent." And I said, this is what will move the needle. Now, here's the cool part, it wasn't just an email. She sent that email out, and a client who she had been talking with for a period of time leading up to that read the email, called her, and booked a consultation that day.
Oh my God. Like, okay. So first of all, big shout out to Kelly Carr, good friend of both of ours. She's up in the Seattle market. Anyone who's listening up in the Seattle market, please call Kelly.
Yep.
But even you telling me that story, I'm pulled in. I'm
Mhm.
listening. I'm like, oh my God, that like I can picture it. And it's so genuine. Are you telling me that anyone who starts hearing that story from Kelly doesn't know what she believes in? That story right there immediately creates empathy, it creates trust, it creates you actually care about what I care about. You care about not just the transaction, but now I understand about what homeownership actually means to you.
Yes.
And
And
that is a
why
personal brand.
yes, and why okay, so you're not just clothes slinging loans because that's what's putting, food on the table, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But all of the sudden, she found a way to unpack the layers behind her story, and she even said in her email, "This was the first time that I was able to connect the dots in my own story and have, like, it just all lined up."
And that's amazing. And she's a veteran loan officer and has been a very a high volume originator, and a great originator. But I think that, underneath this too, again, going back to our point about signal versus noise, the shift in society, now AI, this feeling of like, okay, what am I doing? Why does it matter? There's something about like this full circle, like the more advanced we get with AI, what I'm also seeing is, but we're coming back to the basics.
It's almost like I don't wanna say anti-AI, but to your point, it really is like, "Hey, we have gotten so far in perfecting and almost,
Yes.
glamorizing our content, right? We used to say your Instagram thread needs to have beautiful cover thumbnails and every third one needs to be this and for a period that worked, right? That was kind of the algorithm and that was a few years ago. But where we are shifting right now with in a society that you can outsource your voice, your pictures, your video, your copy, we are quickly being trained to trust nothing out the gate. And now you have to earn my trust because I'm starting at no trust because I'm assuming you use AI to do everything. So now I'm looking for a breadcrumb that makes me think, oh, there was a real human behind this post. So, case in point, I will, not every time, but I will intentionally put a typo in my comments or my
Mhm.
content. Not be like I'm a grammar nerd. So it's like nails on a chalkboard for me to leave a typo in there. But I occasionally will do it as a signal because AI can't like it doesn't write typos. Right? And so it's like for me personally, yes, I approve every single piece of content that I put out there. And I do use AI, but I work through every piece of my content. But it's like you're saying, we're going back to the basics where we got so far off kilter for overproducing our videos and overproducing our content that, I see this movement now. People are like craving IRL, right? We're in real life. So people are going the opposite way of like, hey, I want to deplatform and I'd actually like meet with you in real life.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, and that's what's and think about how fast this is happening. Because, right, I mean,
So
we have to have
fast.
more polish, more lighting, more microphone, more, editing, and then remember, like, just like 2 years ago, like, all the reels had little emojis popping up and all the edits and
All
the
of it.
cut through, and that's what you're supposed to do. I'm like, "I gotta keep up with that and do that," and I'm like, "I don't wanna do that anymore." And I used to just do a bunch of, like, I'm just gonna walk and talk, right? And I like doing that. But that's exactly this full circle that has happened so quickly that people just want authenticity. People care about what you care about, and they want that human, whether it be a typo, whatever the case is. Now, you still have to have a good sound. I'm not gonna, discredit all of
Yeah.
that. But the point is just be human. That's it. And, even some of the great, I was on a website recently and, as a marketing website and I was watching the promo video of it, and right in the middle of the promo video was a blooper, and he couldn't pronounce a word, and so but they kept it in there, and then when I
Yes.
talked to him later, I said, "Dude, that was the best promo video that I had seen. That blooper actually is what pulled me in and connected me,
Yes.
and
And it
that is
breaks the pattern disrupt.
and
Yep.
that's the signal."
Yeah.
And good.
Because we're craving I think here's the thing, with really good produced content, there is this pressure, and everybody, especially in our industry, we're all following each other, which may be good or bad, but we're seeing out everybody's stuff. And there is this like almost like this competition of like, I've got to keep up with the Joneses in terms of my
Sure.
content. And so it's created this pressure of like, well, my content has to be a certain caliber. Again, I'm not saying don't have your own standard for excellence. I'm not saying throw out just spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks. You still need to find what your level of professionalism and excellence looks for you, but do it in a way that feels natural to you and doesn't feel forced and produced. right? So there's some tactics that I would have with, one of the things that always helps is who is your ideal client persona, right? We'll refer to
I'm doing those frameworks right now.
yes,
Yeah.
we say it's like what's your ICP? Okay. And I mean when we just simplify this, I like to ask my clients. I say, when you're creating content and you're whether it's video, written, whatever it is, who do you imagine is sitting here doing this? Looking at their phone, moving their thumb and scrolling. If you try to create content for everybody, it's going to speak to nobody because you can't be all things to all people. So as much as you can narrow in niche, and you're going to have multiple ICPs, right? You're going to have, and I would argue that you could have ideal client personas, and you can also have ideal audience personas, right? There's going to be people that are going to consume your content that might not convert, but maybe they know somebody that knows somebody that, whatever. But as much as you can get into that piece. So, an example or an activity that I do with clients is when we're trying to get to that, I'll ask them, okay, as a loan officer, for example, you probably work with first time home buyers. Great. Most of us do. All right. But rather than just saying a first time home buyer, because that could be the 22-year-old that just graduated college and is wanting to house hack and has very low risk, up to the 40-something-year-old that's got a baby on the way, they're married, they are living paycheck to paycheck. Their level of risk is very different in lived experience. So let's imagine who is the ideal first-time homebuyer that you love working with? Like if every first-time homebuyer could come to you like this, now describe them to me, right? Try to put a real face or a name to it. Now let's talk through, okay, what were some of the fears? Like when they came to you, what kept them up? Like what got them off the fence? Was it really rate or was it really this? So trying to break down some of that. So as much as you can try to understand who is going to be looking at your content. Now, when you start thinking about, okay, I need to send an email or I need to create some content, great. Write that content or speak to that persona. And the more specific you can get, the better it's going to be.
Well, it's so funny. I mean, 'cause that's exact like when I'm talking about so I'm doing these, these 60 to 90-day sprints right now, all about how do you break into any conversation? How do you become remembered? And then how
Mhm.
do you get referrals as a part of that? And the three-part framework, I mentioned the first part, which is we need to first figure out what your purpose is, right? Because that's what's going to connect you. The second part is exactly what you just said. It's your ideal client persona framework. And as we go through that, and because it's not often that I'll be on stage or something like that. I'll say, okay, everybody who's your ideal client? And some will say, anyone who needs a mortgage. I'll say, oh, okay. So a first time home buyer versus a savvy real estate investor that has 20 properties, same person?
Yeah, not at all.
Does that savvy real estate investor you may not want? That person might crush you. Whereas somebody else might say, yes, I want every bit of that because I'm the complicated loans guy. I'm the guy who masters, wealth and real estate. Like in fact, I don't want the first time home buyers.
Yeah.
Great. So now we're identifying. And then there's a
Right.
framework that we go through, again, identifying what's their problems. And I heard you say, what keeps you up at night. That's exactly it. What is that 2 a.m. to
Yep.
5 a.m.? Solve that right there. My
Hmm.
whole purpose my whole purpose in life is so you sleep at night. If you're up worried about your mortgage, your payment, building wealth throughout real estate, what have you, I'm not doing my job. My purpose is that you sleep at night so you don't ever have to worry about
Well, and I think for a long time, we've believed the idea that everybody's rate sensitive. I've got to be rate competitive. And I'm like, rate is the smallest fraction to the whole part of this process. If you were to poll, 10 people that came into your office, how many of them truly, all other things stripped away, were actually rate sensitive? And that is a piece, and it's multiple things, it's not usually just one. But at the end of the day, what is that 2 a.m. thing? Is it like, oh, do I go with 5 and an eighth or 5? No, it's probably like, hey, is this gonna work? Am I gonna have enough margin? Am I gonna be house poor? Or, there's so many different things that can be kind of driving those fears. And again, there's probably many variables of that. There's exercises to work through. Okay, let's kind of do some work to figure out what could some of those things be. Now we figure out, okay, we have our ideal client persona. We've identified some of the things that really are making them fearful. Now let's look at your story. And how does your story potentially connect with their fears? How is what you do and what you're really good at, how does that speak to those fears and their needs? Great. Now let's bridge that by telling this story. So going back to Kelly as an example, she's also a mom of young adults. So you better believe that story doesn't just connect with the first time home buyer that might be stressing, like, should I buy my home? But I bet you it connects with all of her past clients that have bought a home before that are like, I have a grandchild who is in that position. I have a past client who has young adults that are just getting ready to go off to college. There's so many different personas now that can connect in with that one story.
Well, and again, people connect with people, not product. People care about
Mhm.
what you care about. And so now we're creating brand identity. Now we're creating brand connection. It has nothing to do with the logo behind you. It's everything to do with who you are. And that's what we're going to connect. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit because I mean we've talked about AI. It's come up in this conversation, and obviously that is a big conversation. Now, we could joke around and say, yeah, AI is just a fad; it's going to go away just like the internet. Well, joking around, aside, of course, we have to lean into it, and to whatever degree that means. I mean, not everybody has to become an AI, expert or an AI, CEO and start, vibe coding and building. And you and I certainly have been, going down those paths and whatnot. But because we have an AI powered consumer, and as a mutual friend of ours, also Eric Post, who's the CEO and founder of Huzi, HUZI.ai, says the most important thing for us and our value is we also have to keep our humanity out in front of AI. And what I add on top of that, it's our humanity and our humility, which I think is so much what we're talking about. Our humility has to come through as well. And if we can keep our humanity and our humility out in front or on top of AI, then that prevents AI coming on top of us, which is what it is absolutely is trying to do. It is absolutely trying to replace all of us because transactionally it can.
Yes,
It
100%.
can, but it doesn't mean that's what our consumer wants, and it certainly isn't what we want. So how do we leverage? How do we amplify with AI? So what are you discovering, certainly because you're very, very involved in using AI as a tool, as an amplification, vehicle, if you will. Where, for someone who's listening to this right now, and what I find too is a lot of people, I mean, yes, everyone's using AI to some degree, whether it be just starting with the search function or I've made it as far as I have a custom GPT, or now all of a sudden I'm starting to like Claude code and build something,
Yep.
I mean, everyone has a varying degree. But I think there's also a lot of people that, and I was talking to a guy over the weekend about this. He's like, I just don't want to learn something new. And I get it. And I feel like there's also people like, I don't even know where to begin to even ask the questions for how AI can help me
Yep.
solve or do something more. But so what's in your discovering as you're working with clients and kind of the spectrum of usage? What are you discovering? How are you helping? What are some of your ahas with AI?
Yeah, I mean, the AI overwhelm is
Right?
so real.
Yeah, the threat is real.
It's honestly, there is not a day that goes by that I don't hear in some fashion of feedback of, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. I literally had a current client text me last week because I mean, a lot of the work that I do is kind of in sprints. So, I have like the initial work with helping them build out their brand book, and I can talk about that in a second. But then it's like, okay, well, what happens after that? Right. And so this individual literally texted me and was like, I feel so overwhelmed right now because I'm trying to stay in my pipeline. I'm trying to stay on top of my team and my loans and this, that, and the other. And now I have to learn AI, exactly what you just said. They said, will you be my AI emotional support friend, comma, for a fee, of course. Right. And I was like, but in some variants, I feel like we all can somewhat identify with that. Like, I don't have all the time in the world to be going and learning the best prompts or how to use this. And it is a very new tool to know how to leverage. So, going back to, I think you asked, how am I guiding people through this process? The way that I have approached it very early on is I've remained curious. When I first learned about, I first heard about AI, my husband told me about it. My husband is in technology and he has always been an early adopter. And so this was almost 3 years ago now where he was like, "Oh, have you heard of ChatGPT?" And I was like, What is that?" Like, this is before it was even common. I just,
I
like,
think we all have our moment when, like, we heard about ChatGPT for the first time, which is crazy. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, and I was like, so he was like, "Look at what this can do." And so he gave me an example, and I was like, I mean, I just, like, my brain was unlocked. I was like, "I feel like I'm in an altered dimension. I don't even know how to fathom this." So, from very early on, I saw the potential. And so for me, I have remained very curious. What is AI? What does that mean for my role? How could it help me? How can I learn it? So I have just integrated it into my life and my business because I want to learn. But second to that, I joke that I was AI before AI was AI. What I mean by that is how I started in the mortgage industry and doing what I'm doing now is I knew nothing about mortgage. I knew how to market. I had worked for other industries, but I'd never been in the mortgage industry specifically. And I got a job with a team, a couple of top producers, and I knew nothing about the mortgage space. But I instantly had to ghostwrite all of their content as if I was them, and I had no context for the industry. So I was consuming every podcast, every book, every blog that I could. And really, what was the differentiator for me is I sat between their offices and I said, "Hey, every time you have a conversation where you can leave the door open, will you?" And so what I did is I spent 3 years eavesdropping on their conversations. How do they talk to a nervous buyer? How do they overcome a rate objection? How do they pitch a builder? How do they talk with a loan or a realtor? Right? So I was learning how what their scripting is, their value proposition, what have you. And I got to the point where I could ghostwrite all of their content, even their thank you cards. Like I just wrote as them.
Mhm.
And so you fast forward and you think about like that is one of the roles that AI does for us today is the whole point is that your AI gets to know who you are and it can help you think and it can help write your content as if it is you. And so that's where I started with AI. And so that's really the role that I play now, helping service providers, loan officers, coaches, really anybody in the mortgage and real estate space define some of those foundational questions of your brand, your brand. Who are you? What do you do? Who do you serve? What makes you different? And then we build together, I help them build a brand book, which basically puts to words some of those descriptions. And now you can use that tool in your AI platforms to help it serves as a single source of truth just for
Yeah,
training.
and we'll put the link in the show notes, but I mean, everybody, you need to check out what Katie has built with her brand book. And, and I went through the process with you, Katie, early on, as you're, developing this. And, what's so and, one of the most amazing things that AI can do among many, obviously, is being, and again, we'll use the word again, is being able to cut through the noise. You can just brain dump into whatever AI platform you're doing. Ask it to synthesize what you just said. I mean, ask it to give you back what you're looking for, and it really has an uncanny ability of to take that entire brain dump and put it into a very concise sentence or bullet point. You're like, "Oh, that's it. How come I couldn't think of it
Couldn't
like
I say
that?"
that? Right. Yep.
It'll go off in some different directions, right? And that's where it gets hard because in one hand it's simplifying, and as it's simplifying in its one hand, it's complicating in the other hand. And I think that's what your brand book has done very well at is you've pre-engineered a lot of, these prompts and and these other factors to help train your AI and build out your AI team, if you will, so
Mhm.
that you always have this access point to go to it. And now it's not just brand as a singular strategy, it's brand as a dynamic strategy to the market that we're constantly evolving, from there. And so it's such a foundational item, and
And the brand book, I mean, just as you said, it's not meant to be a set it and forget it tool, right? I mean, who the business that you have today probably looks very different than the business that you had even 18 months ago. Just because the market that we're in is different. Maybe your book of business has changed. Maybe you've moved to a different company or a different location. So if you think about it in that way, you as a person and you as a brand are going to grow and evolve
as you should.
as you should. That is like a healthy signal. And so you want your brand foundations to change. Some of the things that probably aren't going to change are things like your origin story. How did you get into this business? Some of your backstory. I say every brand story has a good backstory. But again, it's a foundational tool that starts there where most people are going to just Chat GPT, Claude, maybe Gemini, and they're trying to write content. They're like, why does this not sound like me?
And I
Because
think that's what has turned a lot of people, it turned me away too, because that was sort of the initial, like, okay, the first blush with AI for a lot of people is like, "Oh my gosh, it can create a whole month of content for me. Let's do that. This is amazing." And then you start looking at it, you're like, "I don't sound like that." And I sure
I
as
would
hell
never talk
never
like
say the
that.
word fluff, and I don't use M dashes like this, right? That's kind of always
Yep.
my, I don't
Yep.
have the straight talk, right? So you also start digging in, you're like, "I hate it. I don't want it to do it. I don't want to do that anymore." Right? And so that's the sort of full circle.
Yeah, because it's like, yeah, I would never talk like that in real life. So then they kind of swing the other direction of like, well, AI sucks. And it's like, well,
No,
no,
it
but
just needs to be trained.
if you think of AI like a tool or an extension of your team, there's also a layer that comes with having to train it, right? If you hired somebody,
Bingo.
a real human, to do all
Yeah.
of your copywriting for your social media, or you hired a marketing person, or whatever that looks like, there is going to be an onboarding, a let's get to know each other as a sorts. And so that's where the brand book helps accelerate that. It serves as a single source of truth. So whether you're working with an outside agency of real humans or you're working with your AI team, you're all on the same page contextually.
And you're
And again,
organized.
what?
And you're organized.
And you're organized. And then you can update that document. So, say you're like, oh, my company just came out with a new product and I'm really good at this. And I really want to pursue being a divorce specialist or going after new construction or adding in another vertical. Great. Now you already have your brand book. So, all you need to do is add in another ICP, another ideal client persona. Let's go after this, and that's where AI can get really helpful. It's not just for writing content. Like that's one really helpful use case of so many. You can have it look at being like a business coach. And I would never say that it should replace human coaches because that's obscene. But for little one off things like, okay, hey, I'm feeling stuck in this area, knowing everything you know about my content strategy or my marketing strategy or my sales, whatever it is, what are 3 ways that I might be able to leverage this? So you can start asking questions and organize some of your thoughts, but it still doesn't replace you, the human in the loop. And it still doesn't replace your actual team. We still need coaches. We still need all of that.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a client who's a CEO of a company, and that's exactly what we've been doing. I said, "Look, this is use ChatGPT to brain dump because we're solving some very complicated things. We're solving for some very complicated relationships as well.
Mhm,
So you
mhm.
need such an immense amount of outlet to get everything out and to be able to find all these nooks and crannies and to be able to, the other thing is AI is non-judgment. I mean, it's not human, even though it can sound like human, but
Not
there's a no judgment zone. There's an ability to completely brain dump. And I have to say that he would forward me all of ChatGPT's responses. Then I would give him some additional kind of coaching on, ask ChatGPT, talk like this, make sure you're uncovering this, for example. But I'm telling you, and talking about, what was going on, ChatGPT's analysis of the situation was so good. And I was learning from it as well because I was getting these insights from the brain dump. And it really, really helped us solve this really big, complicated problem faster with
Mhm,
insight. And, for example, like as a coach, I'm not trying to give them the answers. What I'm coaching them on is to make sure that we're asking the right questions so we know that we're going through the right amount of decision process that will lead us to the answers. And that is what AI, in this primitive form is so good at. And quite often, we jump right to a conclusion. We jump right to an answer because that's what we think we're supposed to do, and we're trying to get to that. But we might miss some very, very important branches on this tree, you
yep,
know. And
yep.
so it's a really good example of an experience. And this is, and I say in its primitive form because this is still in very much an ask, right? A search engine, an ask, and AI is moving from asking to now doing,
Yep.
building,
Yeah.
and so there's this evolution, there's this velocity, and,
And
this kind of next frontier.
it's so fast. It's changing so fast. As somebody that is in it full time, all the time, it's still incredibly overwhelming. Like I know you and I are very much I would say, very forward adopters of this.
Trying to be.
And it still feels like you're being waterboarded every day. And, there's new apps, there's new tools, there's new all of these things. And, I had a moment a couple weekends ago where I really struggled because I was like, hey, when I first jumped headfirst into this, like I was one of a few, at least in our industry, that were like starting to really get loud about this. And I'm like, and now everybody's an AI expert, an consultant. Everybody's got an app, and at least that's kind of how it feels. And so then I had this moment of internal conflict of like, okay, well, how am I different from anybody else and my messaging and my value offer? And, I just went back to, hey, at the end of the day, we will always need brand foundations. We always need to get really clear. I hate using the word clarity because it's so overused now. But at the end of the day, we always need to be clear on our value proposition. That's why I think what you do is so important because you're helping people understand what is your mission, what is your vision. Those are core foundational things that you should be able to answer. You need to answer. Then you bring in AI after the fact and how can that as a tool help leverage what you're doing instead of replacing all of those things.
And I'm going through the exact same. You and I are in a similar path, right? And I feel the same way, that overwhelm, or as I'm building something and I'm trying to build something very big and very powerful, Profit Ninja, like, what you and I've talked about, and some of you guys in the audience are familiar. But the velocity of AI widgetry hitting the market, and I was just at the gathering, in Austin, the housing market, and there's so much AI product, and I'm asking myself, what of these are going to be here next year?
Mhm.
And by the time we even get something rolled out, is it too
Is
late?
it too
Because
late?
it's advanced past that.
Yep.
And this next frontier of AI, with OpenClaw that hits the world, and this, what I call it, AI agency, again, going from asking AI to do something and is responsive, to then now creating an AI org chart of AI employees that are managing each other to
Mhm.
then go out and do things on your behalf under, and I'll say it again, under management. And
Mhm.
then you can just text and speak
Yep.
to it. That is, I mean, this is wild. And that's just one big vertical. Then you have the build vertical within AI, which is, again, what I'm doing through Claude Code, what you're doing, and now so many other people are doing. So then again, you sit back and say, okay, wait a second, because I'm going through this. Exactly what you just said. Like, I'm excited about what I'm building, but not to lose sight of what I do.
Yeah.
And there's a difference there. And what I do, right? Helping people find purpose, lead with purpose, and really amplify their brand themselves, living in their genius zone so they can lead more effectively and be connected into their business and their success in their life. I mean, I often say my joy, purpose, and passion is helping you succeed on purpose, but in your design, not
Yep.
just my design, and
Yep.
being able to extract that. So that's not AI, that's human,
Yep.
right? But then we can use it to amplify.
And that's not gonna change. That's the beautiful part, is it's not gonna change because at the end of the day, people are always gonna wanna buy and sell homes, and people are always gonna wanna do business with people. Is AI massively disrupting what normal has looked like and will look like? Absolutely. And are some roles gonna be absolved or kind of changed? They already are, and they will for sure. But at the end of the day, if your goal is to be like you're saying, how can I be human? How can I be a real person? How can I continue to be so clear on the problems that I solve and be so resolute in finding the people that have that problem and being so convinced that you're really good at what you do and you can help them from a place of service, you'll be fine. I mean, it's rocky trying to sort this all out, but again, I think yeah, you have to be really clear on your why and your conviction and let that lead you.
AI will not replace you if you don't let it. AI wants to replace the transaction, so you have to then protect the relationship.
Yeah. And but isn't that in a way, I feel like AI has maybe amplified some of the problems or the core things that we've needed to already be good at. We have always been in the relationship business. No matter what facet of sales that you're in, that should always remain the core is that I'm in the people business. Good marketing, whether AI is involved or not, should always be answering the question, what problem do I solve? Why am I different and why am I better and who do I help? The all of your core efforts should already be working toward answering those questions. AI has just made it loud and has amplified it. And I think the people that can get really clear at answering some of those questions are going to stand out.
Katie, the last question I want to ask you, if there is one word, or it could be a couple words, but if there's one word that you want everyone to from this conversation to remember, what is it?
Remember, I would say curiosity. If you can remain curious, you let your curiosity carry you.
Be
So,
curious.
some of us are curious in a lot of different directions, but going back to what you care about and what your convictions are, if you let your curiosity carry you into those directions, you will find yourself in opportunities you might not have otherwise if you had just tried to keep yourself in a traditional box. And I think your curiosity will allow you to explore, experiment, and, try different things that your other competitors might not.
And curiosity is one of the greatest characteristics of leadership. So I love
Unless you're a
that.
cat, then we all know what happens to the cat
Yeah, well,
who's
that's probably
curious.
more mischievous than curiosity. Well, I appreciate you coming on, talking some shift. I mean, this again is just such a good centering, grounding conversation, getting our brand identity, as that signal versus the absolute noise behind us. But here's the great thing. That's your competitive edge because it is so noisy. There's so many logos behind us. There's so much corporate marketing that's getting in the way. It's actually, if you're listening to this, that is your competitive edge. So be the signal. Be brand identity that you are. We just have to surface it and extract it, and then let's get it to market. So
Yep.
awesome. Katie, where can people
Yep.
find you?
KatieShive.com. And I'm most active on LinkedIn and Instagram just by my name, Katie Shive. I'm pretty easy to find and love real conversations. I answer all my DMs, I write all my content. So if you reach out, it's yours truly behind the
It's
response.
the real human. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Guys, check out Katie for sure. You're going to love the content she's producing. You're just going to love Katie. She's a rad human being. She's a fellow member of the Good Human Club, as we like to say. And definitely check out her brand book, the service she provides, the brand book, the personal coaching that comes with that. It will change your business and it might change your life. I mean, it's that good. And it's again, I'm going to
Hey,
say it
don't call me
again.
a brand therapist for nothing. I'm just going to say you might get a little therapy in the process.
I've been called a business therapist myself, and I never realized that before I got into this. I was like,
Yep.
oh, there is that vertical right
There
there.
is that vertical right there.
All right, Katie, appreciate you coming on, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Talking Shift. See you again soon. Hey, thanks for joining me today on Talking Shift. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on our next episode.